Phone calls slowed down, conversations changed tone. One minute his name was part of the excitement, the next minute it was being treated like a complication. Fans watching from the outside said this wasn't new. This felt like an old pattern resurfacing. Every time 50 got too loud, too visible, too uncontrollable, the system tried to remind him who owned the room. What made this situation explode online was the idea that the resistance didn't come from artists arguing over creative direction. The rumor suggested came from the business side, the polished corporate side that moves without raising its voice. The side that doesn't need to diss you on a record because it can simply close a door and pretend it never existed. Fans immediately pointed fingers at Jay-Z, not because of anything confirmed, but because of the position he holds and the influence associated with it. In comment sections, people weren't saying it was proven, they were saying it was believable. 50 Cent, according to how the story is being told, didn't respond with anger right away. Instead, he did what he's always done best. He laughed, he joked. He made comments that sounded playful on the surface, but landed heavy if you knew the history. Fans say you could hear it in his voice. The frustration wasn't explosive, it was controlled, almost amused, like someone who's been here before and already knows how the game ends. Behind the scenes, according to online speculation, conversations were happening that had nothing to do with microphones or stage design. This was about legacy, about whose story gets told to millions of viewers in one night, about which faces get associated with unity and culture, and which ones are quietly labeled as liabilities.
Sources claim that for 50, the idea of being excluded didn't just feel professional, it felt personal. This wasn't a newcomer asking for validation. This was someone who had already survived being written off, blacklisted, and underestimated. Fans started pulling up old clips, old interviews, old moments where the tension between 50 and Jay-Z never fully disappeared. They pointed out how different their paths had become. One leaned into chaos, controversy, and brutal honesty. The other leaned into silence, structure, and influence that didn't need explanation. In this story, as it's being discussed online, those two approaches finally collided again. The turning point in the rumor mill comes when Eminem's name enters the conversation. According to reports circulating on podcasts and fan pages, Eminem wasn't interested in politics. He wasn't interested in smoothing things over. The claim is that when he realized 50's place on the stage was being questioned, he took it as a line being crossed. Fans say this is where the story shifts from industry maneuvering to something emotional. People who believe the rumor say Eminem made it clear that he wasn't separating himself from the person who stood beside him when nobody else would. The alleged message was simple: if you rewrite his story, you rewrite mine too. Suddenly, what had been a quiet exclusion allegedly became a problem nobody wanted to publicly own. Because pushing back on 50 was one thing, pushing back on Eminem was another. Online discussions describe a tense standoff that never played out in public. No shouting matches, no leaked emails, just pressure moving in opposite directions. Fans imagine rooms filled with polite smiles and sharp undertones, where every sentence meant something else. On one side, the argument for control, image, and clean branding. On the other, the argument for loyalty and history that couldn't be erased with consequences. As the story goes, 50 Cent didn't celebrate. He didn't act victorious. Instead, he reportedly took note. Fans say this is where his tone changed, where his jokes started sounding like warnings, where he began hinting that if people wanted to pretend nothing happened, he was more than willing to remind them. The idea that someone tried to silence him didn't scare him, it energized him. What keeps this rumor alive isn't just the names involved, it's the way it fits into everything people think they already know. The idea that power doesn't always attack loudly. Sometimes it edits you out. Sometimes it waits for you to disappear on your own. And sometimes, according to fans watching this unfold, it underestimates how much noise one person can make when they decide they've had enough. By the time the performance finally happened, the audience saw unity, celebration, and nostalgia. But behind that image, the internet insists there was a different story being buried. A story about control challenged by loyalty, about an old rivalry that never needed another diss record to stay alive, and about a man who refuses to stay quiet no matter how polished the room around him becomes. The conversation didn't explode all at once. It crept in slowly, like a rumor people weren't sure they were allowed to repeat out loud. Fans noticed the shift before any clip went viral or any quote got pulled. It was in the pauses during interviews, the careful wording, the way certain questions were brushed past instead of answered. People online started saying something felt off, like a piece of the story was missing on purpose. And when 50 Cent began hinting that familiar forces were once again moving quietly against him, the speculation took on a life of its own. According to the reports circulating, the issue wasn't framed as personal at first. It was described as logistics, image, timing. Words that sound harmless but carry weight when they're used to exclude someone. Fans claim that behind closed doors, discussions were happening where 50's name suddenly came with a pause attached to it. Not a no, just hesitation. And in an industry where hesitation often means control, that alone was enough to spark suspicion.
People who follow hip-hop history closely say this pattern isn't new. Whenever 50 Cent enters a space that's tightly managed, the temperature changes. He doesn't play the quiet game well. He laughs at the rules. He jokes when others expect silence. And according to the chatter, that energy didn't fit the clean, carefully curated image being planned for one of the biggest stages in entertainment. Fans online framed it as a clash of philosophies more than personalities. The rumor mill suggests that the tension sat unspoken for a while. Nobody wanted to be the one to say it directly. Instead, communication slowed. Messages stopped coming back as quickly. Meetings happened without his name mentioned. Fans watching from the outside say it looked like the slow fade that happens when someone is being edged out without a public
Confrontation. The kind of move that leaves no fingerprints but changes everything. What pushed the story into overdrive was the belief that 50 Cent noticed exactly what was happening. According to online discussions, he didn't storm into rooms or demand explanations. He observed. He joked about it publicly in ways that sounded light but felt sharp. Fans say that's when people started connecting dots. Because when 50 jokes, there's usually a reason. And when he laughs at something that hasn't been confirmed, it often means he knows more than he's saying. At the center of the speculation sits Jay-Z, not because of a statement or a direct accusation, but because of influence. Fans are careful to say this is commentary, not confirmation. Still, they point out that when decisions about image and access are being made, his presence looms large, whether he speaks or not. The idea being discussed is that power doesn't always need to announce itself. Sometimes it simply rearranges the room. According to the narrative being shared online, the situation wasn't just professional for 50. It cut deeper than that. This wasn't about proving himself. This was about history, about being part of a moment that represented a culture he helped shape. Fans say the idea of being quietly removed from that picture felt like an attempt to rewrite the past, and that's something 50 has never accepted easily. As the story goes, things might have stayed quiet if not for one factor that changed the balance: Eminem. When his name entered the speculation, the tone shifted immediately. Fans who believe the reports say Eminem wasn't interested in the subtle politics unfolding. The claim floating around is that once he became aware that 50's position was being questioned, he took it as a personal line being crossed. People online describe Eminem's reaction as firm rather than dramatic. No yelling, no public statements, just a refusal to move forward under conditions that didn't include someone he considers family. Fans say this is where the alleged tension turned into a problem nobody wanted to handle openly. Because while pushing back on 50 might be manageable, pushing back on Eminem carries a different set of consequences. The speculation paints a picture of quiet pressure coming from both sides. On one end, a push for order, control, and predictability. On the other, a demand for loyalty and acknowledgement that couldn't be softened with corporate language. Fans imagine rooms filled with polite smiles and careful sentences, where everyone understood what was really being argued without saying it directly. According to how the story is being told, 50 Cent didn't treat the situation like a win or a loss. He treated it like confirmation. Fans say that after this moment, his tone changed slightly. The jokes became more pointed. The laughter felt less playful. It was as if he'd been reminded that no matter how successful he became, there would always be an attempt to manage him rather than embrace him. The idea that someone tried to limit his presence didn't quiet him, it did the opposite. Fans believe it reinforced his instinct to speak louder, to hint harder, to make sure nothing stayed buried too deep. The rumor suggests that from that point on, every comment he made carried extra weight, even when it sounded casual. What keeps people talking isn't proof, it's plausibility. The story fits too neatly into the long history of tension, competition, and unspoken rivalry. Fans say it feels less like a shocking revelation and more like a familiar chapter resurfacing under new circumstances. A reminder that in hip-hop, old dynamics rarely disappear, they just evolve. By the time the public saw unity and celebration on screen, the internet was already convinced there was another layer underneath it all, a layer filled with restraint, pressure, and unspoken conflict. Whether the rumors are accurate or exaggerated, fans agree on one thing: the silence around the situation only made the story louder. And in that silence, 50 Cent once again became the figure people watched most closely, waiting to see how far he was willing to go this time. The atmosphere around the story grew heavier as more voices chimed in, each one adding a slightly different version of the same tension. Fans weren't just reacting to what was said, they were reacting to what wasn't. Silence became part of the narrative. Every time a question was avoided or redirected, people online treated it like confirmation that something uncomfortable had taken place. Not proof, but fuel. And fuel was all this story needed. According to ongoing commentary, those close to the situation described an environment where everything felt polite on the surface and razor-sharp underneath. No one was throwing tantrums, no one was slamming doors.
Instead, the alleged conflict lived in timing, in seating arrangements, in who was looped into conversations and who suddenly wasn't. Fans watching from the outside
say this is how power operates when it doesn't want to get its hands dirty. 50 Cent, as the story is being told, didn't pretend not to notice. People claim he recognized the pattern immediately because he'd lived it before. Years earlier, when radio stations turned cold or labels stopped returning calls, the signs had looked exactly the same. The difference now was scale. This wasn't about a song getting less spins. This was about a moment that would be replayed for decades, a moment that could shape how an entire era was remembered. Online speculation suggests that privately, 50 questioned whether this was simply about image or something more personal. Fans debated it endlessly. Some argued that it was strictly business, that certain personalities are considered risky when corporations want control. Others believed the tension ran deeper, tied to unresolved history and old competition that never truly died. Both sides agreed on one thing: the stakes felt unusually high. The idea that Jay-Z was connected to the situation didn't come from a direct statement. It came from assumption, from the way influence works in spaces like this. Fans were careful to say they were connecting dots, not accusing. Still, they pointed out that when decisions about access and visibility are made, they don't happen in a vacuum. They happen through networks of trust, alliances, and long memories. As discussions intensified, people began resurfacing old clips where the two men spoke about each other with measured distance. Not open hostility, but never warmth either. Fans described it as a cold truce that existed as long as paths didn't cross too closely. According to the narrative spreading online, this moment forced those paths together in a way neither side could fully control. Eminem's alleged involvement became the emotional core of the story. Fans who believe the reports say his reaction wasn't loud, but it was decisive. They describe a moment where loyalty outweighed convenience, where he allegedly made it clear that separating the history of his rise from the person who stood beside him was not an option. Whether said directly or implied, the message fans believe was sent carried weight. This is where the speculation turns almost cinematic. People imagine conversations filled with restraint, where everyone involved understood the consequences of pushing too far. On one side, the pressure to maintain a flawless public image tied to massive partnerships. On the other, the risk of fracturing a narrative that fans cherish. The idea that this balance hung on one person's inclusion made the tension feel even sharper. Fans say 50 Cent didn't respond with gratitude